Medical Humanities and Ethics here in the medical school at Columbia. So today we're going to be having the sort of second part of our first event of the academic year in our bioethics and film series. So second part in that hopefully folks have seen the film already. We screened it upstairs. The goal here is that we're really going to be able to have a discussion amongst the full group. We've got a wonderful expert with us here today, Carol Sanger, who I'll introduce in a moment, to give us some extra insight, but we do hope that it'll be a discussion based amongst everyone, so we can sort of like a bit of a book club. So we can engage these. The goal of the series as a whole is to be able to engage bioethics issues using film as a way to spur on those kinds of that kind of discussion, and then hopefully build some community through time around this issue. So hopefully you'll be joining us for our future sessions. And each time we'll have a special guest expert to be bringing their perspective, as I was mentioning. And so sort of towards that end, both myself and Carol are going to be posing some questions also to the audience, and we also welcome you guys to ask questions amongst yourselves and offer comments, etc., for discussion. So it's not, this is more of a comment, it's more of a comment is allowed here, not criticized as a basis for conversation. Okay, so without further ado, today's film is Audrey Diwan's 2021 movie, Happening, which is called Le Venement in French. It won the top prize at the Venice Film Festival that year, a bunch of other prizes, was really, really well reviewed by critics globally. The director and writer, Audrey Diwan, grew up in France with parents from Lebanon and Romania. She's only 44 years old right now, and this is her second feature-length film. She was previously a journalist and a novelist and a screenwriter, and she studied political science. It's based on a book whose author went on to win the Nobel Prize in Literature in 2022. So if you think about the story, I think that's a little bit of an interesting outcome from the young woman who studied literature and wanted to be a writer, and that was indeed what she did. As a reminder, in this series in general, we'll be making the films available both online, making sure they're available online ahead of time, and also screening them in person as we did today. So the movie, as you know, was based in 1960s France when abortion was illegal. It followed the story of a university student with an unwanted pregnancy. And certainly the context of the story is quite different in a lot of ways from conditions today in the United States and elsewhere, but certainly there are also some significant connections that I hope we can lead us to an important discussion. So we're so lucky to have with us today Carol Sanger, who's JD. She's an influential scholar of reproductive rights and a really award-winning teacher. Her most recent book that I think she's got here is about abortion, terminating pregnancy in the 21st century, and it addresses the regulation of abortion and maternal conduct, surrogacy, and the law's relation to culture. She's also a co-editor of the Cases and Material on Contracts in the 8th edition and other books. And since joining Columbia's law school faculty in 1996, she's been recognized really consistently for her dedication to students and teaching. So she received the law school's Willis L.M. Reese Prize for Excellence in Teaching. She received Columbia's Presidential Teaching Award, the Social Justice Initiative's Outstanding Public Interest Faculty Member of the Year, and Columbia Law Women's Association Myra Bradwell Award for her commitment to mentoring female law students. So she's a particularly good person to have with us here to spur on discussion amongst a group. Carol began her law career in San Francisco as a commercial litigation associate in private practice. She first taught at the University of Oregon Law School and then at Santa Clara University. She's also been a visiting professor at Harvard Law School, Stanford Law School, the University of Hawaii at Manoa, and the University of Oxford, where she was elected an honorary fellow of Mansfield College in recognition of her, quote, world-renowned scholarship in the common law, contract, women's rights, and research in human rights law. So Carol's going to set the scene for us here, especially, of course, in light of this week's events with the elections, etc. We're going to then open it up after Carol has a few minutes to speak on her own. We'll open it up for that broader discussion that I was talking about. So please keep in mind your questions, etc. The online moderators are also going to help us be sure to be able to feed in questions that are coming from online. So, and people who are online, pay attention for a little bit of housekeeping that's in the chat. So I will hand it over to Carol. Are you going to sit over there for that part of it? Wonderful. So I think we're going to move over there.
I was going to sit here for the whole thing.
Yes, perfect. I think that's great.
Well, good evening, and it's really a pleasure to be here because it's a pleasure to be with people today after the last 2 days. And I'm going to facilitate a discussion with the most questions coming from you, but of course, being a professor, I have a backlog of questions to get to have ready. And I thought I would go over with the themes on that I would like us to bring out. I thank you for bringing all the information about Annie. I know I'm skipping all that, but it was a surprise to see she won. I mean, I couldn't have been surprised. I should have known already that she won the Nobel Prize. But I did write down her citation. Recognize, quote, the courage and clinical acuity with which Arnaud uncovers the roots, estrangements, and collective restraints of personal memory. I'm not sure what all that means, but I'm thinking about those words in terms of the book, which I now want to read, having seen the movie, and it's always interesting to compare a movie with the book it's based on, to see what did they leave out, why did they think that was efficient thing to do. But I also spent a lot of time looking up all these articles on her and on her work on memory, and especially there's another book on abortion as well. And then I realized that's not why I invited me here. I invited me here because I'm a lawyer, specialty is reproductive rights, and I should add motherhood. I teach 1 semester of motherhood and next semester reproductive rights. So it's like, that is all good things. And I thought that I would highlight more legal issues that come out of the movie, and I presume the book. But so here they are, and they're not in a particularly sensible order. But one is the movie raises the issue, although it doesn't say it's doing that, of technology, the technology of reproductive health care. And we see it, and we see this repeated attempt to produce an abortion. And when talking, I think it'd be interesting to talk about that in connection with medical abortion, which is that's taking the pills instead of having anyone touch you. So the normal manual aspiration abortion for early abortion is usually called surgical abortion, but it's not surgical in the sense that anybody is like cutting. It's just you're touched, and there's that which contrasts to medical abortion, which is the taking of 2 or 3 pills. So I have some more specific questions about that, but I think I'll just tell you one that's now thinking about it, which is why would a woman want to have a medical abortion, having taken pills, versus having a surgical abortion? And this is really worth thinking about. I think we got some hints at it in her story. But that, and the reason why this is important is because we have enough clues that there are going to be efforts now to restrict the use of medical abortion by the states. So that, and right now, I think 62%, 64% of all abortions for up to 10 weeks are done through pills, and done through abortion pills. So that's news. And the thought that that method might be removed by states who simply want to make abortion worse, make it harder for women to experience. Is something that I think we should talk about. Which leads actually to the second bigger theme, which is we're in a strange day. I mean, this is 3 days after the election. We don't know exactly what's going to happen in terms of legislative proposals or executive orders, which is one of Trump's preferred ways to get things passed. But there's going to be activity. And I think that the pro-choice women made a good showing in this last election. Only quite good enough, although they did prevail in 8 out of 10 states. That's really impressive. And everyone, and we all know we were hoping they would pull more women into coming out to vote, and it didn't go down that way. But they stuck, even states that stayed red, passed these reforms on putting the right to abortion in the state constitutions. So that's important. I mean, abortion is a real player right now. And the well worth keeping our eye on is what's happening in the various states and what women are doing in order to terminate a pregnancy. So the main point here is that while I thought when months ago when I agreed to come to this, that we'd be looking at the movie as a sort of historical event. We'd be looking to see what did people do in 1963? What was that like? But it's not historical anymore. It's future oriented because the restrictions that are planned for abortion are exactly to return things to the way they were in the 60s, which is, and we can talk about what those restrictions are. But it's very weird to be living today and talking about this, something that was of historical interest is now of current interest in terms of what women can expect. So I wanted to, that's a second thing. The third thing is just, I think the movie has some really interesting examples of the social status of women. And it'd be worth sussing those out and letting them float up to the top. The one that I particularly remember and made a note on was whether it struck you when the mother is washing the underpants. You recall she's doing her daughter's laundry. First of all, a mother is doing her daughter's laundry without a washing machine. And second of all, there's this lingering on the underpants. I mean, they don't say anything about it, but I thought, and just to give you one more movie, I'm going to give you a bunch of movies. And my life. There's a movie of the book by Philip Roth called Good Luck Columbus. And that movie hinges, whole plot hinges on the mother folding her daughter's underwear in her drawer and finding a hidden diaphragm. And the diaphragm reveals the forbidden sex that must be necessitated. So I thought somebody can write a really good term paper on underpants. And this is their significance in American literature. Okay. So that's those are 3 of the points. The technology, the location and time of how abortion is regulated. We are now, Harris had it right. We are going back to we are in the pre-road days, and we'll have to see what shape that's going to take. I have more about no, in your question, no, I would like you to go ahead. No, please do. Okay, so what is the event? Why would someone want? Because this has to do with locating abortion culture. Why would someone prefer if you have you're only, let's say, 7 weeks pregnant and you want an abortion? Why would you choose a medical abortion or a surgical abortion? What factors would make your choice of selection more attractive to you?
We can open the it up to the
Please,
audience.
that's one
Discussion, yeah. We have mics and there are additional ones that feel free to go ahead and speak up.
I mean, what were her problems in trying to get an abortion? I mean, she had no choice, she had to have physical intervention. Was there anything, that was positive about that for her? No, not much from what we saw, I guess.
Probably not, although certainly that when she interacted with woman who was performing the abortion, she got some kind of support socially from her.
That's true.
Perhaps.
That's true. So she actually had a professional. And that's how her friend introduced she said, she's an expert, she knows what she's doing, and staying with her. So having a professional might be comforting. If you know that you can have a nurse or a doctor who's done this many times and can tell you the best and more important. Okay, so that's a good reason. How long did it take to have an abortion? Go to have a surgical abortion? 10 minutes, 10 or 15 minutes, and let's add 3 hours for sitting in the waiting room. Oh, 1 hour ahead of time and 2 hours to make sure you're okay. Okay, so we'll say 4 hours total, but 15 minutes for the process. And how long does it take? So what's the advantage of that? Is there any advantage to speed?
Folks are not too in something like medical abortion and how that process goes.
Yes, so medical abortion, is done purely by chemistry. You take 2 pills first, and then 24 or 48 hours later, you take a second pill. And the first 2 pills are called mifepristone. What they do is they loosen the embryo from the lining of the uterus. So they break down the ties. And then what the second pill does is it just causes cramps. Sorry, it causes cramping. So it's easier to get the embryo out because you've already loosened it up. And now it just needs to be cramped up by your body. And in many countries around the world, they only use the second pill. And that's much harder because you have to really cramp up to get rid of the contents of the uterus. But that's what's done, and they're something like 92% success. Okay, so so that's the process. And the advantage is you just have to swallow a tablet. You can swallow 2 tablets, drive yourself home, you have the extra one you're going to take in a day, and you can take them wherever you want. You can go to your grandma's house. You can go with your friends and hang out and watch a movie. You can lie in bed and cry in your own house. You can do whatever you want. But that's under your control, not in a room full of strange women. Women who are strangers to you. And so there's that advantage. You can kind of make your own environment in which you're going to experience something that you imagine will be somewhat difficult. Maybe emotionally, maybe not, but you can comfort yourself. Okay. Any other advantage to say you're a married woman or have a partner and you're not that keen and he or she, I guess, doesn't know that you want an abortion, that you plan an abortion. What's the advantage of a pill? Well, it cramps out your guts not effects, but grams down the contents. And it's like a period, it's like a very hard period or like a miscarriage. So you can say, I don't know what's wrong with me, I'm having a terrible period, or I didn't tell you I was pregnant, but I'm having a miscarriage. So it offers you cover, and you don't have to say, yes, I'm causing a miscarriage myself. So there's that kind of social function of not upsetting anybody who will get upset. Because that's important to you. So these are reasons. The cost is somewhat until for cheaper. That's true. That's true. But there are other factors. So it's interesting thinking when you control the medical decisions we make over one's own body. Why would you choose one or the other? What does it tell you about the society we live in? One is might be hospital. It might be a hospital environment to go and to a clinic in the United States. You have to go past theaters in a huge number of places. So it's already you're in an adversarial, unpleasant screening people are coming out to protect you and put covers over your head, so that you won't be bothered. But I think that's really worth thinking about. And all we saw in the movie was he tried time after time after time to use the methods that were available. But she wasn't in professional medical care, except I guess at the very end, which is.
Although we don't know exactly what kind of training
That's what she had. Yeah.
Yeah, I wondered if we can stay on this, maybe I was thinking maybe people might want to weigh in a little bit on the role of physicians in the film. I was curious what people thought of. There are a few different physicians in the film. And I'm curious about people's thoughts on their role.
But I guess. Yes, I'm such. I guess I was so surprised when the first doctor who was more sympathetic, when she went back to him, when he said, "Oh, this other doctor you went to, this other doctor, he gave you whatever that other medication." That was just a shy. I was just so shocked that he just substituted his own like ethical feelings or whatever the source of his beliefs were for her, just stuffing in her ship without actually. She should have had informed consent before taking a certain medication, but they probably have that requirement in France too, and he just ignored it for his own, he was being selfish, it was just his own reasons. All he had to do was just, what he said initially was, get out of here, I'm not doing that, and then we thought, oh, he's just afraid of going to prison, but really he had his own personal beliefs, and how dare he? A doctor should not be just imposing their own beliefs, and then without them even knowing it. That was just like so appalled. But maybe in that kind of environment, that kind of stuff might happen.
Yeah, other thoughts? Certainly, paternalism in medicine is, not gone, and we are certainly in, I think, a different era now, around some of the important questions, et cetera. I mean, certainly people probably have come across stories, et cetera, of people in this period who were not told of a cancer diagnosis, for example, especially a male physician believing female patients didn't need to know because there wasn't anything that could be done for her, et cetera. So certainly the mentalities around what patients ought to know, and it's their role in their own care has changed beyond the issue of reproductive justice, but more broadly. But I think that was probably pretty accurate. I think that this kind of thing was happening. I think we have all of the text, and this is certainly a film based on a real memoir of an individual. That is in the memoir.
And I wonder, what did she feel like? And she was betrayed. He lied to her and betrayed her, and she happily mentioned it to the other guy because she thought it was on the up and up. But how many times can you be betrayed before you mistrust everyone? you know, before you really don't think anybody's treating you on fairly, or as they should, or as you expect them to. That was I thought that was an upsetting part when she later found out. And then when she got that information. So,
There was also the physician that she saw at the very beginning, the one that someone said is a little more sympathetic. Any thoughts on what was the medicine from those interactions?
well, I'll just tell you, it's not my anecdote, but Catherine McKinnon, who's a lawyer, a law professor, and she writes on free speech and she's a big deal. She had put out 2 years ago a new autobiography of herself, and she dedicated it to Dr. So-and-so, I can't remember his name, and she said, I am who I am because of Dr. Leonard Nimoy, or whatever his name was. And he was a British doctor. She got pregnant when she was a grad student, was in England. And she went to him to see if she could get an abortion. And it was, the rule was, you could only give someone an abortion if you thought they would go mad and kill themselves. That was the standard. That's a standard. It was in the United States for quite a while too, that if you could prove it, so, you know, you have to go in and swear that you're gonna kill yourself, and you have to have this. And he explained that to her, and then he said, I'm gonna give you permission, I'm gonna do this anyway, because I'm under 2 conditions. You must never tell anyone that I've done this for you. I can't remember what the condition was, but he finally died, and so she put it in the dedication of the book. And I thought that was really significant, and he helped her, he did what that guy wouldn't do.
I found it quite interesting when she first went in and he said, well, you know, it was 3 months ago, you were here for the flu, and no, you didn't want to miss your classes. He clearly is her family growing up doctor, and that I thought that was a very, you know, giving you some insight into who she had opportunities to see and, you know, what it meant to be coming to him with this problem. There was this question around, at the very end, when she goes to the hospital. We don't know what happened to her. Any thoughts on that?
You mean when she's wheeled out?
When she's being wheeled in, and we've been told that sometimes the physician will write some miscarriage, and sometimes they'll write abortion, and then end you in jail. And so I found that a moment where you're like waiting to find out what will happen to her. And but I think say miscarriage, you feel like, okay, it's a horrific moment, but at least you feel like, well, that physician chose to not say it.
Yeah, they set that up very nicely for us, so we didn't have to. We come home feeling a little bit.
I think both of us probably have lots of questions up, but maybe we could also, if anybody has any questions or things that they were on their mind about, maybe that they wanted to talk about, I'd love to hear that.
Hello? Okay. Hi. So what I found myself wondering, partially answered your question, sort of wondering about the different outlook and attitudes, is how recently it had become illegal to have an abortion, or and I don't know a lot about 1960s in France and the history before or after really, or how and when things changed. And I really was thinking a lot about, did they, in their whole professional careers as doctors, this is the way it is, everyone understands it. Was the law changed a few years before? And of course, I think about it because of now, and the law is changing, and sort of how it is for doctors handling these sudden changes and what they were able to do. And would you be more likely to kind of ignore the law at the beginning when something changes? Because it's patient, or this is what you've done in your career, or the opposite, people get very scared and anyway, so I don't know a lot about that.
Well, I looked it up, that the law changed in France to make abortion legal in 1975. So it's 13 more years into the future before you could have a legal abortion. And I also looked up, remember she got a little certificate of pregnancy. I thought, what the heck is that? We don't have that. And it turns out that after you see a doctor who confirms that you're pregnant, he has to wait a certain number of weeks and then send you the certificate. And the point of the certificate is so you can take it to another doctor and get free healthcare for, even now, for an abortion. And so they're very interesting, very different than what we're used to, where everything is very hush hush. Yeah, even though we now have, we really raised a big question, which is, are all doctors trained to perform abortions? And the answer is no. They've got a dispensation from using federal money, even when Roe was good law and you were supposed to do them, they said to hospitals, you don't, doctors can opt out. And but one thing that the rule is that if you opt out, you're supposed to make a recommendation. So even in a Catholic hospital, but it doesn't always happen. So if you don't want to do it, you don't have to do it, but you have to make a recommendation. This was before Roe was overturned.
The question also got me thinking a bit about, one that I had been wondering about, which is, right, so I had mentioned in the intro, certainly, 1960s France was significantly different socially from modern current day America. I mean, certainly we have the idea that premarital sex was so massively taboo in a way that, of course, it's not the same way in the US today. Although in the US, we certainly have different places and different expectations in different places and groups, etc. I think that's also something that might be worth talking about. But was what can you take from this film? What we Carol was saying originally when you accepted, you thought of this as look at this for historical interest, and now you're thinking about it for the future. And right, so in this case, presumably I believe that abortion had not been legal in any of the years immediately prior, whereas of course now physicians would be going into a new legal situation of abortion being illegal. That would shift. That would mean something very different. So a bunch of people who have been trained or have been practicing and no longer can. Certainly very different than I think in the film. So that's one thing. But I wondered also, maybe others have something to say about sort of, I don't know, what are some of the limits of comparison that we can find from this film? I do think that question around, the place of sexual taboo is different. What does that mean about, okay, well, in the past it was taboo to be having premarital sex, and now perhaps it's not, but we are left with the same legal result. So anyway, curious about other sort of where you see connections today and where you think that maybe you can't really draw a connection from the film.
So the thing that I kept thinking about, particularly as they had the talk, the countdown essentially, is twofold. One is that because I guess the difference is that because there are states where abortion is legal and accessible, it's going to be about scarcity, not absolute inaccessibility. But part of what I think is the connection similar there is that it makes it so there's an expediency where you need to be able to very drastically make these decisions very quickly, which, to answer Carol's earlier question, I can see that being an appeal of being able to get medication as opposed to surgical. The other thought I had is that essentially by having an absolute ban, there still is the implication that we're outsourcing the ethical dilemma. It's still happening. It's now more dangerous. It's now likely to kill someone. But in so doing, even the idea of individual states making it, we're outsourcing the ethical dilemma to those states that it's illegal. So are we actually doing anything?
Well, we are doing something. I mean. For the pregnant girl. You should have a woman, they should have a place to go. But you can, there are very good maps online that show how far you have to go for a legal abortion where you live. And 300 miles is nothing. I mean, in Arkansas, I think Washington DC is the closest place. And so it's really, you have to not only, you have to know, you have to find out that you're pregnant as quickly as you can, which is something especially teenagers don't do. They say, oh, I don't feel well, or I just don't feel well, or it couldn't happen to me, this magical thinking. And so there's a problem of this, the timing of it, and also having the money. And so there's some really good organizations like Trust, I can't remember what it, you can go online and find them, and all they do is fund women to travel. Because that's another thing, if you don't have a car, I mean. It's a big deal to do this.
I think Carolyn did, maybe somebody can, Carolyn hand that, maybe I will. Take a moderate prerogative at time and say, so yeah, I think, I know that we have, at least one person here who studies film. Not to put you on the spot, but I wondered maybe some others, I wondered if we could talk a little bit about filmmaking actually, so about things like color and angles, etc. Were there anything that stood out to you about the filmmaking that you particularly liked, or the music, or, the way the film was, the way it was, the editing, or the rhythm, etc. Were there any, or disliked? Thank you for taking that bait.
It's okay, it's just, I'm a film major, and I'm just gonna say maybe 2 points. First one is how it actually really centers the protagonist as we see the film, the camera is always tracking her. We see a lot of shots that's taken from her back as we follow her going through all the different lanes and streets. She's always walking and we're following her. And also a lot of close-ups we see that's featured on her face. We see all the intentions and how tense she is the whole time. And that really features how the film is taking the perspectives of feminism instead of broadly speaking like a documentary style. It really takes up like you have to take your place. You have to choose the director has chosen the stand for you. You have to like always look at her. That's the first thing. And I think another point that really stands out is the sound. We hear that, I already forgot the rhythm. Every time she decides to do something, like she's taking the actions, we hear the same rhythm that is beating all the time. And it's like, I think when we get to the, when we get to the last few minutes, we are actually take it as a reminder. Like we know if something is happening, something's dangerous. It's always keeping your attention, like you are wondering if she's gonna be safe this time, is she get away from the law or something. So I would say that this whole film is really drawing us to the more psychological aspect instead of like I just said, it's not about so historical or political, but always about how she thinks and how she feels. It's very about the experience.
Can I ask you a question? I was taken by a scene where her mother is hugging her. And it seemed to me that the mother was feeling her differently.
Yeah.
I thought that something was being revealed and the mother didn't do anything about it. But I thought that was very interesting and subtle. And maybe, if I recognize it, maybe it wasn't so subtle, but I thought she feels that her daughter's changing. And I thought that was, everybody's, yeah, the camera was watching her. The mother was watching her. I just thought they were all gathering evidence for us.
Well, I think because the original version is a memoir, and also the film actually lays out a lot of intimation or subtlety with just give you the space to imagine, because we see a lot of times the camera just somehow swaying to the mother and doesn't tell you whether she knows or not, like the scene you just mentioned about the underpants, and also how she sensed the change in her daughter, but she never really say something, at least not shown to us. But in that same scene when she hugs her, I think it's definitely she senses something, but also we can see like from her perspective, and also we can demean that she's not really getting much great education, right? Because when her daughter says something that you don't know really about exam, she slapped her. I think that's really point of how to say she's hurt by her daughter about that kind of humiliation, and we see those different aspects of mother-daughter relationship depicted in the film. So maybe it's her choice to not say something, because it's not only like sexual, it's a sexual interactions a taboo at the time, but also it's the dynamic of daughter-mother relationship at the time. It still functioned under this, how to say, patriarchal system. So there's a lot of things just left behind for us to think about or imagine, and that's the charm of the film.
That's very helpful what you just said. So, I was thinking also how she ends. Yes.
Yep.
How she, when, I can't remember which of the young men it was who she had told she was pregnant. And suddenly she became sexual to him, Jean. She wasn't being sexual. He just decided, oh, and he said, there's no risk in it anymore. And I thought, whoa, this is right out of the 50s or 60s. But how, and that is something girls, in all the studying of girls who are pregnant, much studied that what you don't want to have anybody know, the reason you don't want to have people know you're pregnant is because you don't want anyone to know you had sex. And that's the real secret, right?
Yeah, I think that was one thing that stood out to me when I was thinking about, you know, what comparisons can we draw, and what are the limits of what we can draw? And even though it was the nature of the taboo is quite different, right, then and now, I think, in terms of how much is allowed, how much we can accept. I mean, it's certainly very different level, I think. But you still have this idea about who is the kind of girl who is gonna get pregnant. Right, and that happens now today still, I think, very much this kind of, oh, well, you know, that's the kind of girl who would get pregnant.
But her professor already gave her the seal of approval.
Yes,
And
I thought you were gonna be a professor.
Yeah, I thought that was a great way for the movie to start, with people backing her, or he backed her. And she then did go to him, and she had such a great line with him, which was, he said, "What, were you ill?" And she says, yes. He said, "What did you have?" And she said, "The kind of illness that makes you a housewife." Something like that.
Right, it's really chilling, but I also thought it was really significant that she said to her doctor, well, I might want to be pregnant at some time, just not right now, right? And I thought that was a pretty crucial thing as well. It wasn't just that she was rejecting totally the idea, it just needs to be her choice when she wanted to do it.
I just want to answer one thing you asked about the colors in the movie. I couldn't see a lot of it.
Yeah, it's pretty
I
washed
thought
out.
it was pretty dark. And I didn't know what I was looking at in some of the medical scenes, I guess.
Yeah,
Which is fine.
I thought it was a very, you know, wasn't like a very brightly colored film, right? It had the really, I thought, highly, maybe highly saturated, I don't know, I can defer to if other people want to have comments on that. But one thing actually also when you were saying the sound, I loved the sound of the pen on the paper after the last shot goes dark. That was, I thought, it felt very hopeful to me. You know, that these little small things that can mean so much. And I thought your point about the shots from behind her head, I also was noticing that, which I think also maybe gives you a little this feeling of surveillance also, right? Put you in her shoes, but also the like feeling of being watched by other people. You know.
Oh, well. You ever safe havens? Safe havens, they're places a woman who's just delivered a baby can deliver her baby to a fire station or a hospital emergency room. There are a couple of police station, I think. And and you can do it anonymously. And they always come up right after somebody's found a baby in a dumpster. So don't kill your baby, don't shove it in a dumpster, take it to a safe haven. Well, there's so much wrong with that I can't even say, but the reason I got interested in it, I wrote a piece on it, was because I was on a train in New Jersey. And there was a big, take your baby, pregnant, take your baby to a safe haven. And I thought, what is that sign doing? I thought, that sign is telling everybody on the car that any young woman on the train might be pregnant. And that we need to put up a public service sign that tells her, and by the way, don't kill your babies. You know, just go somewhere else. And I remember it shocked me, so that I did a study of this to see. So the idea of surveillance and whether she felt she was being surveilled, she knew, and she didn't really tell, she finally told her friends.
Yeah. Also, I guess I had it from the very beginning when she said, the other girls were all thought she was a, loose woman and were giving her a hard time, all of the, you know, the other girls who were picking on her. And that very first scene when they're going to the dance, the guy who she later, you mentioned before, John, says, I think who says, oh, those girls really like you, they're, you know, looking at you, and she said they're spying on me. But she, in French, she uses the word surveiller. You know, they're surveilling me, right? There's surveillance also on my of my sexual behavior from the women also around me. Which also I think gets maybe to this question about how patriarchy comes through women as well. I also thought that question about the slap and the mother saying, and the exams, you know, I found that a really poignant moment. You know, what would you know about exams? And when you, and I love how you phrased it about this mother-daughter relationship, because it certainly is. But of course, I went immediately as a sociologist to what it is about the woman's role in society, and you know, when you, that to your question about the themes that it raises about this mother who maybe didn't have so many opportunities to be learning and educated, but her daughter is disrespecting her around that question, even as she is fighting herself to be able to get that education.
And it did strike me that there were more women in that class, the literature class, than men. I mean, or that France seemed to be ahead of us in terms of equal education.
Yeah, although there was that interesting thing where in the very first scene, the fireman says, oh, let me guess, you're a literaturist. Who said, well, that's easy because all the women study literature.
Right.
Right, so there was a
I
little
thought
bit of
everyone would know studied art history.
right, well,
My
like, you know, I
generation,
mean,
that's a.
you know, I think certainly being able, that there are women women getting degrees, you don't need to align with what they are.
No,
But in
no.
any case, yes. I
Don't
thought-
malign them.
Yeah,
So can I mention these other movies?
yes,
I don't
please
even
do.
I don't know where our.
So the 7:19. A little bit of time.
Oh, good. There are several movies that I show when I do my film
Yes,
series.
uh-huh.
But I want to mention two that I think are incredibly stupid, that I don't show,
Okay,
but that make a good essay. Comparing Juno, do you remember Juno, to Knocked Up? Two more, well, Knocked Up is beyond. You know, good. Don't even think about that. It was sort of okay, but what I didn't realize until I started looking into it was that the scene from Juno where she's going to go to the clinic, and one of her little 10th grade friends is saying, "Don't kill babies. Don't kill babies. Babies have fingernails." So this fingernail scene is done in high school drama classes all the time, which I thought was pretty interesting. I didn't know quite what to make of it, but it's good. I mean, it could be pro-life, but it could be something to talk about. Anyway, I haven't ever pursued it further. But so those are two on the shows, and we're not going to look at those. But there's a very interesting film, it's French, called Blame It on Fidel. And it's about a 12-year-old girl who is struggling with her parents becoming Marxists. I mean, it's not a philosophical film at all. It's all about her going to her little Catholic school and being so happy. But her mother is writing a novel interviewing women who've had abortions, illegal abortions. And so she sits in the corner and just listens to what they tell about their lives and their pregnancies that their husbands require them. So that's a very interesting, it's an interesting movie. The other one is more directly on abortion, and it's called Vera Drake. And it's by the British director Mike Leigh, who's made a lot of terrific movies. But Vera Drake was a woman, I don't think her name was Vera Drake, but that he knew when he was a boy, in whatever town he grew up in. And she was like the lady in the movie who took the 400 francs from her. Except Vera Drake she wasn't charging people. Somebody else was sneaking around and getting the fee, but she didn't know that. But it's the woman who's in the Harry Potter movies and played the Queen in the last episode of The Crown. Anyway, never mind. It's a little old lady, and she plays Vera Drake, and it's very, very interesting. It's set in 1950s England, and her son is so appalled when he finds out she's been doing these abortions, even though she's been doing that out of kindness. Imelda Staunton. So you know who she is in Harry Potter, I'm not sure. Thank you. But she goes to prison, and she hangs out with the other women who are in prison for doing illegal abortions. And in South America, it's very fun. I mean, some states now have legal abortion, but Trump said maybe 5 years ago, we should send them all to jail. He meant the women who have abortions rather than the ones who perform abortions. But I mean, if you put together a list of what's been said, it's very precarious. I mean, one wonders, I don't believe we'll do that. And I'm just telling you my theory. I don't believe we'll ever put women in jail for having an abortion, because I believe abortion is the big open secret of the United States. Everybody says they don't know anybody who's ever had an abortion, but we have almost 1 million abortions a year now. And somebody's got to know somebody. Somebody's got to drive somebody. Teenagers go in groups, not, they help out their pals. So that we know, and when you go past a clinic in states that have the clinics isolated, there are cars in the parking lot. So somebody's using these services, and I think that's, my reason is I don't think we'll put women in prison because we don't want your kid's second grade teacher to go to prison. You don't want your cousin to go to prison. I think we protect ourselves by saying we don't know anybody. But so that's a sort of safeguard of sorts. But you get punished in a lot of other ways, so.
Yeah, the point that you raised about, well, actually, maybe I should open it to other people have comments or other questions, as if we have about 5 minutes left, so I don't know, are there big topics that we haven't hit yet that people wanted to talk about? Like the movie? All right, well, one thing that I was, Carol, you were bringing up the, well, a couple of things. One is the you were mentioning, the blame it on Fidel, and that the connection to communism, which did come up a few times in this film as well, right? The one girl says, "Oh, well, my dad's communist and he hasn't been killing anyone," or and there's some comments about how should we feel about Jean-Paul Sartre and his communism, etc., and studying literature in the period, I think. And also really was quite influential, I think, in French culture about ideas about sexuality, sex and sexuality. Anyway, I guess sort of open relationships, etc. Anyway, so there's some French context around that communism and South Code that they talk about a lot in the film.
Yes.
But I thought, so, but getting to this question also that you said that there's the proof of pregnancy, which now allows people to, well, allows people to get free healthcare, right? Certainly a different, very different context in terms of social solidarity that maybe the side of the more communist leading, et cetera. Certainly a social democratic French state where there's, I always speak I'm talking, which is that there's a social net in France that doesn't exist here, which means something. And the financial consequences of this, I guess, is something else.
Well, just in terms of how countries deal with abortion, Germany is very, very interesting. Germany has in its constitution that the human life begins at conception. And why does it have that? Because their constitution was written after World War II. And they said, we don't have to be record here, and we believe we want to emphasize humanity in everything, of everyone. And so fine. But in Germany, you can actually get an abortion if you meet the time restrictions, if you go for counseling. And guess what? You get to pick a counselor you want to go to. So you can go to Caritas, which is a Catholic organization that counsels women, and they can tell them what or you can go to your private doctor, you can go anywhere, anyone. But if you get the certificate that says, I have counseled this woman, and the appropriate number of minutes, I'll do it, you can have an abortion. And lots of times I've been asked, why don't we have that? And I said, because it wouldn't work that way in the United States. We would have huge fights over who can counsel. It would become very Christian in a not a good sense, I think. I think we would have interference from pro-life churches. But there are ways to there are compromises that could be made if we were mind to.
Well, I think we're gonna start wrapping it up. Carol, did you have any last closing comments that you wanted to share?
No, I mean, I'm looking.
Yes, which is fine. I didn't mean to put you on the spot, right? Any other last thoughts from my group? I just, really, Carol, I'll hand it off if you have something, but also as you're thinking about it, I just wanted to say thank you to you. For being here.
My great pleasure. I mean, you know, it's very lonely working on this. Before I did work change in reproductive health, I worked on infanticide. And someone said, I said, that wasn't any better. You know, that was also very down. But, oh, I just wanted to say one thing. This was an unpleasant scene where she miscarries into the toilet. And one of the things is that girls who have waited till a late, that was fairly late, I think it was 12 weeks, yeah. I mean, it was a substantial thing. They need to have privacy. And so bathrooms have locks. And so bathrooms are where lots of babies are found in toilets, and because there's and so you see what women or girls are driven to when there's no sensible social support.
And I thought maybe that was where you were going when you were talking about the difference in choices between medical and surgical.
Yes, yeah.
You know, with a medical abortion, you may need to pass tissue. Right.
Yeah, yes, that's right.
And that may be difficult. I mean, mentally, psychologically.
That's right.
Yes. So that's why I'm talking about.
Some women say, I want to do the pill because it's more natural. It's like my body simulates a miscarriage, and that's what the body is meant to do. So that it goes both ways.
Yeah. I'm gonna wrap us. We can, you know, people can stay and chat as much as they want. I did want to talk about the fact that the question, this deep voice of the woman who performs the abortion anyway, I think that choice. But in any case, many more questions that are interesting, and hopefully we'll be able to talk more throughout the rest of the well, this evening and in the future. I do want to I know there's people on joining remotely, so let them say good evening. Or did you guys?
No, it's just thinking about the woman's husband sitting at the table.
Okay. Oh, is that? Yeah, I didn't really know what we were supposed to
I
make of that.
assumed she came bursting in. They were having dinner.
He was like, let me get out of here.
And he just got out.
In any case, so I would love to see all of you guys again at these events. We also have some other Division of Ethics events on November 12th. We've got, our grand rounds, Merlin Chakwanyan, who's a PhD and a professor here at Columbia, is gonna be discussing his book, All Politics, their book, All Health Politics is Local, Community Battles for Medical Care and Environmental Health. And along with the chair of our division, Sandra Sujin Lee. And they're gonna be talking about how local communities shape public health and policy. So we'd also love to see people on our mailing list. So please subscribe so that you can find out about our events. As I said, both to the online audience and to those here, we really appreciate your comments and you being here. We're also gonna send a survey around. We're building up this event. It's a new series. It's a series that we're trying to do in a new way of it now. And so we would love to hear your comments about the event so that we can take that into account as we plan the next one, and also ideas for other movies and topics that you want to talk about. So thanks again and have a good evening and see you soon.